All right, so yeah, that's the news for us. We people ask about a rant, but you got to send me stuff to rant about. You know, if you think there's something rant worthy, you got to tell me about it at news@fpvknowitall.com, where we take all the news
Surely you have
submissions.
something you want to rant about every week, right? Just not
It's not
FPV
drone
related.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah, the
I'm
problem
not
is
saying we
FPV
should do
related.
the rant.
Yeah.
But if you were to rant about, oh my God, no, you're going to say something political, and then it's going to be all over.
I don't care anything about politics.
What would your rant be this week if you were to rant? Anything in the world?
I mean, I could do a Diablo Immortal rant.
Oh God!
Yeah.
What a joke that was! Wow, what a joke that was! All right, next week, Blunty's going to prep a Diablo Immortal rant. It's not FPV related, but I know you like gaming, and I think we would all enjoy it.
I could also respond to the rant you did. You did a gaming rant, right?
On
your last live stream
about about gaming and what's enjoyable in games. We should. You want to talk about gaming for like 10 minutes at the end for the people who stuck around?
Yeah, we could do that.
I won't put you on the spot.
Yeah, the one thing you mentioned was it must be a different kind of dopamine, and I think the secret is it's the same dopamine, and that's what's bad about it, right? Like so we're in the for people who don't have context. The conversation was essentially
sum up the conversation.
Yeah, the conversation was essentially that Raid Shadow Legends is something you're doing a stream of. That won't be during normal stream time. It will be later as a stream.
I will be doing a sponsored Raid Shadow Legends stream because they offered me the right amount of money.
Yeah, so Raid Shadow Legends basically plays itself, and you were talking about how there's a trend for games to play themselves, or at least do a lot of the work themselves, right? Even Diablo Immortal does that, where it'll walk to the next location for you in a lot of cases. And so you were saying like how in your day, you know, there was basically achievement, right? I believe this is what you're saying, essentially. You're doing something, right? And you're getting something out of doing something, right? Like, and now you're not doing anything, but you're still getting something. And where is it coming from? What's the dopamine coming from if you're not performing an action to do the thing, right?
There's two things. There is, I just won the football game, and I get a reward for having done that. And there's, I am at football practice every afternoon, and that is gratifying in a different way. The doing the thing that leads to the reward, and it feels like games that grind themselves, it's like, let's just sit here until, oh boy, I've sat here long enough to get a reward. But they take away the gratification of doing the thing as if it didn't have value. That's, I think, where I was saying.
Yeah, 100%. And my thing is that where you derive the dopamine doesn't matter. It's all the same dopamine. So if someone has learned the dopamine interaction, like if I play, if I play this game and I grind for 2 hours and I suddenly get the next level and I can build the next thing and I can do the next thing, I get that dopamine rush and satisfaction from seeing the number pop up and the window go, and whatever happened, right? Because I earned it, right? I did all this stuff and earned it. But the question is, is it really because you earned it, or is it because the number went up, right? Like, are you familiar with the clicker genre?
I 100% agree with you. Go ahead. I agree with you, though.
Are you familiar with the clicker genre? Do you know what an auto clicker is?
100%.
Okay. So for people that don't know, basically I think the first one was cookie clicker, but essentially there's a game where you have a cookie and then you click the cookie and you get a cookie. So now I've got one cookie when I click it, and I keep clicking the cookie, I get more cookies. But the first thing you buy is basically a thing that clicks the cookies for you. So you buy a pointer finger that clicks cookies, and then you can spend more cookies to buy more clicks with the pointer finger. Or you can buy upgrades so that a click does more cookies. And then you can buy factories that produce cookies over time. And then you can buy, it just basically keeps expanding.
It's the whole idle genre, actually, I think is the genre. Yes, the idle RPG, there's this whole genre of games where the idea is that if you don't want to play the game, it will just play itself in the background. And when you come back, look, all your characters have leveled up. And it's just like, to me...
However, if you don't maintain it, you're not being efficient. Because if you let it run all the time, then you didn't do the upgrades that would have made you get exponentially more money, because the money exponentially grows. It's not linear progression. Right? That's part of what draws you in and keeps you playing it. And that's also what makes the to me, what makes the dopamine better, right?
But it doesn't. Here's the thing: it does give dopamine. Like dopamine is a neurochemical, and like when you unlock that next level and bing, it's just like you're sitting at a slot machine and it goes ding 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 ding, and then your brain goes ah. So, but the thing is that everything else about the process has been stripped of all reward except the anticipation. So here's the thing about dopamine, and I'm not an expert on reward brain response, but I know I've done some reading. The problem is that if you get a reward consistently and too often, then you become desensitized and it's not as rewarding and enjoyable anymore. So when you're doing like animal training, they have a thing called slot machining, where you don't reward the animal every time it does the behavior that's desired. You kind of do it semi-randomly, and that anticipation of, am I going to get a reward this time? What about this time? It's this sense of anticipation, and then, it resolves, and you get the dopamine when you get the reward. And the problem, the games are just inducing that state.
That comes from loot boxes. What you've described comes from a loot 100%. Box. But my point is, it doesn't matter if you worked to maybe get it, right? The slot machining you're talking about is the same slot machining that a loot box does. Because a loot box says you don't get it every time. Even though this game is playing itself, you don't get the best reward, but you might. And especially if you select this credit card, you have 10 more chances at maybe getting it.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I get what you're saying, but the way that they develop this is because everybody doesn't get it, because you get it specially. It feels special when you get it. They're creating a special interaction in your brain every time, right? Like, so I'm not getting the same character every time. I'm getting, this special 5-star character that they just released this week that was super rare. Right. And next week I got this 5-star character. So that's a different response in my brain, right?
I guess the thing about it that stands out to me is that it feels like it has been sort of stripped bare. It is to it, like, ultimately every activity that humans do is in some ways like a search for dopamine or there are other neurotransmitters. But at the end of the day, you enjoy things that you enjoy in part because you get, or your brain tells you that they're rewarding. But it's been stripped to this bare. It feels manipulative almost. Whereas if it's like, hey, we made this game. Some parts of the game are going to be enjoyable. Eventually, you'll get to level up, and it doesn't feel manipulative. It doesn't feel as. It's like the difference between, it's just like it's like crack. But it's like we've just taken away everything except here's your hit.
If both people are enjoying it as much, like who are you to say, I guess, is part of the problem, right?
And people do.
Yeah, like that's part of the, maybe I don't want to, I don't know. I think there's pros and cons to each. Obviously, the reason I brought up Diablo Immortal was just the major issues that Diablo Immortal has with the way it's monetized. It's sneaky. There are other gacha games that they're called gacha games is the specific term for games that you have to spend money to roll a slot machine, essentially, right? Even the early gachas were like literally slot machines you're putting fake coins
unlockables, chance to get a rare item.
Yeah, but those all, almost every gacha game that's like big has a very clear pricing, especially from the first time you open the shop. It also has very clear results of the percentages when they come out, because loot box legislation in a lot of places has said you need
Europe
to show.
Will regulate them out of business if they're gambling, and so they.
Do you know Diablo Immortal found a way around that?
Go ahead.
Diablo Immortal makes you do 5-minute dungeons before they drop your loot at the end of the dungeon, so it's not a loot box. But you get to decide how much you invest in the dungeon to make it drop better gear, so it's like a loot box. So they've gotten around the loot box legislation because the legislation is written too concrete, and it doesn't stretch enough for that 5-minute difference. Yeah.
It's like, here's the thing. When I go into a casino, I know that this is a highly refined environment whose only goal is to give me just enough dopamine to keep me there long enough to lose all my money. But at least they serve me drinks while I'm there.
Yeah.
It feels like a lot of these games are highly refined and highly manipulative of people's reward-seeking behavior in ways that, I don't know. I also could just be an old guy who doesn't get it. But it feels really, I don't know. I feel a little skeezy.
I see it very similar to how I feel when I walk in a casino in Vegas. It's very similar to me.
Yeah.
Like I can see behind it's just flashy lights and a bunch of stuff, and the house is winning all the odds, and the slot machines on odds are even better for them because they're flashy and fun to play and easy, right? And you don't have to have strategy with the slot machine. So like, I think you could see behind a lot of different things like that, right? And like, I think I don't know, like I see them very similarly, though the newer games are getting worse, and that's the problem, right?
Well, they've realized that. I mean, they have access to information that casinos would kill for.
Yes.
They have.
Well, they have access to the person at home. I mean, that's what the casino would certainly kill for. Is like, hey, this is on every phone. I mean, that was part of the online gambling thing, and all the regulation that came behind that. And
I saw. It's something. And to me, here's the thing that kills it for me. Here's why I usually don't enjoy playing this style of game. Like occasionally this style of game is done in such a way that you can play the game, you can have fun playing the game, and it doesn't feel... Oftentimes when you play this game, it feels like that the enjoyable playing the game is just there to get you into the game long enough that they can rug pull you, and then suddenly you start losing, or you level off the curve, and then you can't win anymore, and you're not having fun anymore. And it's like, well, F you. Like if you could fairly play without spending money, then I would be like, okay. But if I know that you are capable of tweaking the game to make it unfair to me because I didn't pay you money, I'm never going to trust you that you're not doing that. And then I'm not going to enjoy it. I mean,
Diablo Immortal is the active thing to talk about. But when you get to the end of a 5-minute dungeon in Diablo Immortal, in any Diablo game, you are excited for the loot fountain. There's a big loot fountain that comes out of the end boss, and you get like 2 legendaries or 3 legendaries, and you're like, oh, these are cool. What did I get for drops? But basically the way it works now is like you get a much smaller fountain unless you pay money in, and then the more money you pay in, the more the fountain works. And like just as an example for people who haven't been following this, I just want to give you some perspective into this. Okay, so like you start a dungeon. Okay, you start a dungeon just basic. You get a little bit of loot. Or you can put in a $2.50 crest. A $2.50 crest gets you some more loot. You get a bonus loot at the end of the dungeon. You could also put in 2 crests or 3 crests. So you can spend $5 or $7.50 to boost the dungeon for even more loot. However, when you put in 3, it doesn't show up until you put in 3. But once you put in the 3rd crest, meaning you're willing to spend money, right? They already know who you are. Then 7 more crests pop up on the bottom. And you can only put in 7. You can't put in 1 or 2. You can put in another 7 to make 10.
For
so
how
you can
much?
spend $25. So it's basically $25, because the crests are $2.50 each. Then that applies to all people in your party. So there's incentive for everyone in the party to boost to 25 because you're leeching off of the people who really spent money. If you're in the dungeon and you didn't spend money to help the drops. So they're manipulating
like social obligation as well.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, this is just
everybody else put in $25, you got to put in $25, or you're a mooch.
Yes. This is like yeah, it's just insane. I think they already announced they passed $10 million in revenue. Or no, I'm sorry, they passed 10 million users.
That's what's weird is it works. I don't understand. I mean, I do understand.
Well, because we're the minority. We care about stuff like this.
Well,
other people just download the fun thing and go play it and spend the money when they want to spend the money.
Here's what makes it skeezy. While you were talking, I've been thinking about it and thinking about what you're saying, and I think something clicked for me. It is, so let's say, back in the day, somebody makes an A-tier game, $60 game, Fallout, New Vegas, Diablo, whatever. They sell it and it goes out there, and whether it works for you they don't know you. There is no way for them to look at your play and go, oh, I see, this guy, we're going to get this guy, and tweak it to your individual limbic system, and then try and squeeze money out of you. Like, they make the game, they put the game out there, 18 million people play the game, some of them like it, some of them don't, and at the end of the day, maybe you buy the sequel or the DLC. But with these games, they have real-time information about you as a person and everyone else who's playing, and have the ability to very, very carefully refine it to squeeze as much money and to withdraw enjoyment. And that's the thing. I want you to give me a game that you think I'm going to enjoy. Full stop. I don't want you to say, hey, you haven't paid us enough money, so we're going to make you enjoy the game less, unless you pay us.
Yeah.
Because then the more I enjoy the game, the more you could just like suck me dry. And I'm like, forget it. I'm not taking that first hit. I'm just going to go do something else.
Well, part of the problem with Diablo Immortal is that the first part of the game is very low on microtransactions and very high on, hey, this is a cool game. Like, hey, this is like a Diablo game. There's a bunch of pop-ups and it's mobile, but this is a Diablo game. And then you get into it, and the first transaction I think it offers is $1 because it wants you to get your credit card information and get you set up so that you can quickly pay. And once you got your credit card in, it's much easier to make that $20 transaction. So, yeah. Sneaky.
Alrighty.
I mean, there's so many other pieces of this, but yeah. Anyway.
I want to address one comment that I saw, which is, I don't remember who said it, but they said something like kids these days just want to load up the game and go into God mode and rush to the end and then beat the boss using cheats. And I identify with that. My son's 10 years old, and the first thing he does when he gets a game, most of the time, is he starts modding it. He installs mods. He loves cracking the game. He loves going into God mode and poking around. And I'm like, yeah, but you haven't. He's like, hey, I finished this game today. And I'm like, you didn't finish the game. You didn't play the game. You were in God mode the whole time with a DLC gun that you modded in. But he had a great time for 12 hours playing the game. So who am I to judge? As my attitude. And I feel enjoy the games however you want to enjoy them. At the same time, if somebody said, man, I sure am enjoying heroin lately. Yeah, my dealer just keeps giving me more. It's like, well, maybe that there's a power imbalance in that relationship that makes it unhealthy and not in that, well, just, enjoy yourself the way you want to enjoy yourself. And I feel like some of that may be true with some of these apps and games that, I don't know. All right.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
A little gaming talk at the end of the live stream.
Can always talk about game.
Yeah. Blunty, you asked, you said once we should do a gaming podcast. I said I don't play enough games to really participate, but I mean we've just been talking for 20 minutes, so maybe I can participate. I don't know. I
remember saying during that conversation that I'm sure you could talk about them, but yeah, I mean it works.
Maybe we should record a pilot. What do you guys think?
I'm down for that. I like games. I can talk about games forever. So. All right.
Well, I like talking to you. So.